Hey there, this is Alana Terry, and you are listening to the Successful Writer Podcast. I just want to thank you. We're up to close to 170 episodes now or so, and I'm just so thankful to be able to be here and to chat with you week in and week out. I hope you're having a fabulous week. And today I want to just share some of my thoughts about studying writing craft and teaching writing craft. As a homeschool mom, this is like one of my biggest areas of weakness. I hate critiquing my kids' writing assignments to the point where I'm not a very good writing teacher for my kids because I'm so concerned about making sure that they feel encouraged and inspired. And I'm so worried about trying not to harm their creativity or squelch their enthusiasm for writing that basically it's like, okay, good job. Or if I can tell they didn't do a great job, it's like, okay, well, you did the assignment. That's about the extent of the feedback I give. And we're up to now dozens and dozens of courses in the Successful Writer Academy. And I have just released my very first course on writing craft. And I think a huge reason for that for me was the same reason why it's hard to teach to my homeschool kids. Like, it is hard for me to tell you how to write a good book because it is so subjective. I don't want to ruin your voice in terms of, making you second guess everything. And I have read writing books that have done that. They have made me second guess everything. And it has been as if just somebody, because at some point they decide that they are a writing teacher, is like has the authority to create this rubric. And then they say, if you don't follow this rubric, you're a bad writer. And of course, not every course or book that teaches you writing craft is going to do that. And so I want to help you discern the kinds of writing craft studying that will be a benefit to you and the kind that will be a detriment. The biggest question is, what are you getting out of it? If what you're getting out of this course on writing craft or a book on writing craft or a workshop on writing craft or a podcast, if what you're getting out of that is a lot of second guessing and a lot of insecurity, and the next time you show up to write your manuscript, you're like stopping mid-sentence because you're like, oh, well, Joe Expert wouldn't like what I wrote here, then it is probably crippling you to the point where it's no good for your creativity. If, however, the times that you're studying writing craft or listening to a podcast or a course about writing craft leads you to feel inspired and helps you to maybe even find more confidence in your writing voice, that's what we're looking for. The other thing that I prefer to avoid is teachers who teach in 100% absolutes. You may never use an adjective. Well, honestly, like if you did a search and replace for every single adjective in a novel or a book, a nonfiction book, and you just erased it, that's probably not going to be that great. And sometimes we get so caught up in it that like the workarounds that we go through, like I must avoid adjectives at all costs, we end up like sounding really clunky because we're overthinking. And so I want to offer that as my basic rule of thumb. And honestly, this goes for learning writing craft. This goes for the marketing that you learn. This goes for any nonfiction teacher you're learning from. This even goes into like self-help books and personal development training. If it's making you feel like there's some magic rubric that you must attain to, and until you do that, you're never going to be good enough to call yourself a writer, or you're never going to be good enough to run ads or things like that, then it's not the best for you, especially as a creative. Our creativity needs so much room to roam that when we try to confine it into itty bitty spaces, one of two things happens. Either our creativity just kind of lays down and, dies or withers up, or we rebel and, jump out of those confines and never want to go back. And so I want to talk about a way to accept help with writing craft and not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but also to do so with a discerning ear. And so the only litmus test you need to determine if the writing craft course of study that you're considering is right for you is, does it make you feel creatively inspired, or does it make you second guess every time you show up to your keyboard to write. I'd say that if that is the only rubric that you use, that is going to be all that you need. So I want to talk to you about the writing course that I created in order to kind of help walk through what I saw my goal was as a teacher for that course. So Successful Writer Academy just released a course about creating compelling characters and giving them a lot of emotional depth and how to describe your characters in a way that makes them, come alive off of the page. And even things like how to be in a relationship with your character. What do you do when they stop talking to you? How do you even come up with your characters? Because every author has a different way. And so I didn't want to stand in front of the camera and say, in order to write a compelling character, you must fill out this 3-page biography. You must do these 2 journaling exercises, and then you must pre-write at least 3 scenes with them before you are qualified to call this a good character. My job, as I saw it, was to give you enough information that you could trust your own creative instincts to write the characters that make sense to you. And so we talked about sometimes authors get like a character downloaded into their head, right? Like you don't need to do the 5-page worksheet and the 30 journal prompts because the character just showed up. Other authors get to know the character as they get to writing. And other authors love doing all of the pre-work stuff. And so my goal teaching writing craft really turned into helping you become more and more confident with your voice. And I guess that's what I hope to be the takeaway from today in our talk. Whether you write fiction, whether you write nonfiction, is to turn off anything that causes you to second guess yourself. Sometimes that's going to be your own inner critic. Sometimes that's going to be something that your writing professor 15 years ago told you. Some of it might be the advice you heard on some podcasts 2 weeks ago. The writing advice that is out there is amazing for the people that it works for, but not every bit of writing advice is going to work for every writer. I'm never going to censor adjectives. I'm just not. And I don't consider myself an immature writer for not doing that. Other authors are going to take the advice of don't use adjectives or use adjectives sparingly. And they are going to, or I think it was adverbs. Stephen King had a thing about, I might be confusing it, but whichever it is, right? Like you will find conflicting advice, right? Don't use adjectives, use more adjectives, use adverbs, don't use adverbs, use dialogue tags, use a lot of he said and she said. So it's easy for the reader. Never say he said or she said. That's so boring. And so again, it's less about finding the one method that you want to ascribe to. And it's more about you trusting your creative instinct. So even if you're never going to write a novel, if you're only writing nonfiction, even if you're never going to need a course about how to create compelling characters because you're writing books for parents about how to help with picky eaters, even so, there is a time and a place to put blinders on, turn out all the outside influences that up until now have told you what is good writing and what isn't. And it's time to just listen to your own creativity and your own writer voice and don't try to censor that out. That is what's going to make your books different from anybody else's. We could all write an adventure story. We could all write a romance. We could all write a how-to for parents, but nobody could write it the way that you will. And so don't try to copy somebody else's style. We can be inspired by other people's styles for sure. But remember that in the end, it is your voice that you are working on refining. And you can also allow your voice to grow and to develop. And that's a really cool thing. Like the books that I wrote in 2013 or the book I published in 2013, I could never write that book today. It would be entirely different start to finish. And so it's really amazing. Like you as an individual can only write the book you are writing at this exact moment in time. If you were to be writing the exact same book a year from now, it would turn into something different. If somebody else took the exact same outline or the exact same premise or the exact same instruction points and wrote a book, it would be entirely different. And that is what's amazing about being creative. So embrace your uniqueness. Keep on focusing on the things that inspire you to trust your own voice And then if you want some help with your character creation specifically for novelists, then you can grab our new course. It's at courses.alanaterry.com/characters. And hopefully we'll have more like this. I actually found it to be a really fun switch from teaching the straight up marketing, which is another thing that we can touch on is sometimes your creativity is going to get tired doing the exact same thing, right? I love teaching ads, but it is not the only thing that I want to teach authors how to do. And so teaching how to write compelling characters, and especially doing it being so mindful of not wanting anybody to feel creatively stifled or not wanting anybody to feel like there's one way and one way only to do it, was a fun creative challenge. And so you can take that into your writing too. Maybe you've always written enemies to lover romances with a rom-com feel and a happy ending, and it's what you're known for and it's what your brand is. And maybe your creativity wants to throw in a little suspense, or maybe you've always written small town and now your creativity is like, let's do a little bit of a city, right? It is okay to grow and evolve, just like your writing voice grows and evolves. What you write about, the style of your writing can grow and evolve too. And I would just say to enjoy the ride. It can be fun and exhilarating. To every so often just let your creativity sit in the driver's seat and see where it takes you. So I hope that that was encouraging for you, and we'll talk to you next time.